This is the intro to section 1.7. This is part 2, where in part 2 we're going to talk about the distance formula and how to find the distance between 2 points. And as you can see here, they've given you the distance formula. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on how you get the distance formula, but if you just really take a quick glance, you notice you have a right triangle over here, and we're trying to find the distance from A to B. Well, they consider that letter D, okay? That's the distance from A to B. Well, if you do this, you notice you have a right triangle. Well, you take A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, if you want to find C, you got to take the square root of both sides, which is essentially how they come up with the distance formula. Now, that's just a quick synopsis here. Okay, it kind of goes through a little bit more here on the bottom as well. Okay, but the distance formula, yes, you're going to need to know that. No, you're not going to be given that. You are going to have that memorized. Okay, so let's put the distance formula to work here and do some examples. Let's take a look here at this first example. It says finding distance. It says what is the distance between U, -7.5, and V, 4, -3. Round it to the nearest tenth. Well, again, as we go through this here, we've got the distance is the square root of x minus x plus y minus y squared. Okay? There's our main distance formula. So essentially, I'm going to subtract the x values and the y values. So my distance is equal to the square root of -7 minus 4. Those are my x values squared plus my y values, 5 and minus -3 squared. Now we're going to clean this up here. This is going to be the square root of -11 squared plus 2 minus signs right next to each other become a plus. So this is 8 squared. -11 squared is 121. 8 squared is 64. And when I add those two together, we end up with the square root of 185. Now, it says here in your directions, round to the nearest tenth. So on your calculator, you find the square root of 185, and it gives you 13.6. So the distance from U to V is 13.6 units. Okay, so let's take a look now at the second example. And what I want you to do is I want you to complete this example on your own. Hit pause, come up with an answer, and then hit play and I'll show you what the answer is. Okay, now that you've hit pause and you've completed the answer, let's take a look here. So, again, the distance formula, all I'm doing is substituting this in. X minus x, -2 minus 3 squared, plus y minus y, 14 minus -1 squared. And we're going to take the square root of that. Okay? So, -2 minus 3 is -5 squared, plus, again, two negatives next to each other become a positive. 14 and 1 is 15 squared. -5 squared is 25. 15 squared is 225. And when I add those together, I get 250. And again, it says round. What is SR to the nearest tenth? So when I take the square root of 250 to the nearest tenth, this gives me 15.8. So SR is 15.8 units long. Okay, I'm going to skip over the midpoint questions because we've talked about midpoint in part 1. So if you want to do those before class, that'd be great. But we're going to go just use the distance formula here on these ones. So it says, what is the distance between points -9, 8, which is K, and L, which is -6, 0. So again, distance formula, take my x values, -9 minus -6 squared plus 8 minus 0 squared. Okay? Again, two negatives become a positive. So this is negative 3 squared plus 8 squared. Negative 3 squared is 9. 8 squared is 64. 9 and 64 is 73. And again, we want to round this probably to the nearest tenth on most of these. You end up with the square root of 73 is 8.544, which if you round to the nearest tenth gives you 8.5. So the distance between K and L is 8.5 units long. All right, so this concludes section 1.7 part 2. This is using the distance formula. Okay, don't forget to complete your WSQ when you're finished.